This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, cool. And apologies, it's just the recording's just started. So the data that we get and that's gathered. So you've got to think about it depending on your different business industries, how we get the data. So, for example, do we know what the data is to work out what can be done with it realistically? For example, can we use isolated readings from temperature sensors without vibration sensors to have more complete picture of an engine performance? uh, what is generating the data and how is it generated? Those are key questions that you need to understand about your IoT products, etc., going out into the field. And this will allow you to begin planning what can be done with the data. So, like I said, we can put tons of sensors, modules, monitors as devices because the IoT devices are getting, relatively affordable to do this. But how do we bring the data in? Do we understand what it's used for? And what do we need to do to get an overall high-level picture? Again, like I said, what will the data be used for? So there's normally a misconception with what is actually possible with the data that we gather. So it might not always be possible to get what you want from the data you have. This is regularly overlooked, and you need to understand. You need to understand your environment. You need to understand people as well as things. Internet of things. And there's also a section we'll talk about a little bit later where there's quite a big movement in the market from machine to machine to IoT devices. Obviously, just to recap on what we have
Yeah.
with IoT devices. If you join, can you please go and mute just so that we can? Yeah, thank you. Just so that we can get through the webinar. So again, we need to understand our environment. We need to understand what we want to get out of it, and what is actually achievable with the data we want to get out of it. And these are just different examples of what we can get out from our data. And again, what we're trying to say is there's no silver bullet out there. We're not going to come to you and say, okay, this is what you do with your data, and you need to do it this way. It's because of the scope and the breadth of IoT subjects, we start thinking about a data plan, a data strategy, understanding our data, understanding what our business needs to get from the data, understanding what we need to get from the data. And then we'll go through the different use cases in our transformation course. So there's a real world event for system process monitoring. And again, these are two types of events that we'll look at and try to differentiate between on the IoT data transformation course. So, for example, a real world event example is a new MAC address is detected on the wireless access point. So, like if you walk into a room and you join a Wi-Fi network, it will detect that. And this will represent a device moving past an access point. And then the data is joined and it will join another access point. And you can determine the direction of the device's movement across, when we go through from there. System process monitoring example is a trigger event fails at the exact point consistently. So in other words, there's a frequency attached to it that we can say, okay, this will happen at this time, and we can generate different monitoring types of process. And again, you've got to look at your IoT data transformation and your strategy of how you want to gather all the information going forward from that point of view. We talked about creating IoT data strategy. So this and again, it comes down to what do we want to achieve out of the data we're going to gather. So there's a couple of principles you need to set down, and what we'll do is we'll have a look at this in a lot of detail, and we'll say, okay, let's bring in all the stakeholders that requires this data, and this could be the business, could be the IT department, operations teams, for example, all working together. A lot of cross-functional team work needs to go into this to ensure that what we want to get out of the data. Again, we'll get loads of data from IoT devices, so we need to store what is pertinent and important to us. And then bear in mind, if you're in Europe, you've got the GDPR laws coming into place, especially if it's to do with personal information. An example of that is if everyone's got one of these active watches and you do exercise, you're getting all your information of when you're sleeping, where you're eating, your GPS coordinates of where you're running, where you play sports, where you are. So that type of information. Now, if I was a marketing company or sportswear company, say Adidas or Nike, and I wanted to target a certain demographic, and I was sponsoring Fitbits, for example, the Adidas Fitbit, and I wanted to get information out. That's brilliant. I've got all this data, but I can't sell this data on to other marketing companies. I can use it for my own internal use, and I can keep it from that point of view, unless I get consent of the people with the devices. So again, we also want to collect what we've got, and we want to store what is important to us. We need to stay flexible in any of the analytical approaches that we're doing, and bear in mind the ability to upgrade from our data strategy. So we've seen this before when people are taking on data strategies and data storage. Are they going to go software device-based storage, or are they going to go with hard storage? Are they going to keep it in their existing data centers? Are they going to move it to the cloud? You got to think about all the repercussions that this has when we're talking about IoT going forward. Could everyone please go on mute if that's possible? Thank you. What needs to be monitored, analyzed? So again, you can see we start going a little bit deeper into this. The purpose of analyzing IoT data is often not discussed. Sometimes the business assumes that it's collected and we can do something with it. This is particularly relevant to pre-existing IoT data has been collected prior to a strategy. Okay, I apologize. So again, the purpose of analyzing the IoT data is not often discussed, and we need to sometimes bear in mind this when we are the data being collected, and there would have been data that is collected to prior to some sort of IoT strategy. And again, the business just expects us to take this data and do something with it, and we need to know what are we going to do, how are we going to get the data, and how we're going to move forward with it. Next slide, data collection frequency. So you can start seeing we're starting to go down a little bit deeper into it. How often will the data be collected? The frequency of the communication between the storage and that aligns with your analytical strategies. How many devices will be sending data? And finally, what type of infrastructure is required to handle this volume and frequency? So the most important part of a data to size up your data processing requirements from the IoT devices is we could have, I'll give you an example, we could have 100 devices monitoring, for example, water towers, the levels of water towers, the chemical balance of the water in those towers, how often the water towers get topped up, and how often the water is moving through the different suburbs. Just as example, and out of those 100 devices, the data is so concise and it's so volume rich that it's quite a lot of data coming through from those 100 devices. But we know, say for example, if we're only generating 100 megs from 100 devices, then we're looking at around about 10 gigs of data or something in that region, 10 gigabits of data that we need to store at a given time. Where a lot of companies are finding out that they've suddenly got, logistic companies, they suddenly got 5,000 or 6,000 or 7,000 logistical devices tracking cars or trucks. And these data, although these data devices are sending GPS coordinates or frequency events as they're getting utilized, the data, the volume might be less, but the frequency might be higher, which means that we still got to store loads of data. And we need to have a look at that and see how we're going to take that forward. So that's just something, again, to think about, the data frequency. And we'll go into this in terms of our IoT data strategy. There's new and existing data sets, and this is obviously the existing sets that we've got and that we will be generating, but they might not conform to existing standard sets of data to take it in. And there might be new data that we can't get into the current format because of legacy devices that we need to take on board when we're looking at a data strategy going forward. Just again, something to bear in mind, and we'll go into that. Reporting frequency. So how often does your device, how often do you need to report on the data? Is it, I'm a logistical company, do I need it every 10 seconds? Do I need it every minute? Am I monitoring something critical that mean that I need the reporting frequency? Or is it, okay, I just need to know it's certain environmental features, and I only want to know about a device when a certain threshold is breached. Or for example, again, when we're talking about logistical devices, certain companies might say, if you're traveling in a specific country, say for example, if you were based in Poland and we said to you, okay, you're hiring a car in Poland, but the minute you go out of Poland, it would then send us an alert because of the GPS coordinates, etc. That's something that you can have a look at. But again, understand your reporting frequency and how you need to gather all this data. So analytics environment, those of you that are involved in that, you'll see there's many couple of tools available, and these are just some of them that people use. And obviously Python's very popular, MATLAB, RapidMiner, and these are software tools that are now available to take all the data that we're extrapolating and putting it into a format that we can do something with. And again, it's just a slide to tell you about what's out there, and we can, we'll go into more detail with this during our modules. So the data collection, again, you can start seeing, we're thinking about data. How will the data be collected? Must it be based on the organization's IoT strategy, or are we selling the data on, or are we moving the data on? Is there aggregating data from multiple sources? That might be challenging. For example, do I need to take heat, vibration, and environmental data all at the same time? And is it going to be timestamped? Is it for periodic at-rest analytics, or is it live streaming? And again, these are things that we need to understand. Once you start answering all these questions, and once you start understanding, you can see how you start building up a data strategy on how to deal with IoT data transformation going forward. So just a quick thing to have a look at the different types of a quick figurehead here of infrastructure categories. We've got your devices, we've got your communication protocols, how we get it back. We've got your aggregation or internet gateways and where we bring it in. And then we start taking it through the analytical process on the edge. And we've got the at-rest analytics. And then we've got the visualization of it where we can, we've got the dashboards and the API management and the portals. So again, just thinking about the whole process. And remember, the IoT infrastructure always vary significantly depending on the types of sensors and measurements, communication protocols, etc., etc. The majority of IoT use cases can be enabled using cloud-based IoT platform solutions, which are available on the market. So, you've got that ability. You can have a look at it. This approach, by using the cloud-based IoT platforms, dramatically simplifies your infrastructure design, your scalability problems. So you can scale quite nicely with it, and reduces the security and data analytical implementation issues. So again, you can see we're asking loads of questions about the data and moving forward with it. Edge device analytics, just touching this on a basic point of view. So you'll have tons of devices out there. You'll have to aggregate it and move it to the edge. And sometimes that's a better way of collecting collecting the data. Instead of having, like, remember I was saying there's 5,000 devices. Do we take all 5,000 at one time, or do we take the 5,000 correlated on the edge, and then from the edge we can move it through our relative process? So this would be, for example, edge-based analytical architecture that we'll talk about. And you can see you've got your sensors, your actuators, your device, your gateway, your internet, and the cloud. And you can just see the edge modules will be gathering all the information. And if you can look at your sensors, they'll be speaking to these different edge modules. And that's what I was referring to in terms of the data analytics going forward. So finally, just having a look at the frequency of your analytics, and we mentioned this before. So streaming versus periodic, and basically to sum this up, if you've got streaming analytics, it's improved understanding of time-dependent environments. So in other words, real-time alerting, real-time knowledge, fraud detection, anything in the banking industry, anything that's critical to life, that would be coming out of that. Something with the periodic analytics, you look at lower, it would have lower infrastructure costs, but this is for data that is at rest. And basically, if it's not needed real time, we can query different datas. Like how much, for example, your smart meter usage, when that's going back to the electrical companies, how often do we use certain amount of power in the house? Is it gas, is it electricity, and at one time, and can we report that back to our energy providers? And how often will we report that back? Every hour, every day, or once a week, for example, to have a look at that. So what I've done is I've just gone over a high level view on IoT data transformation. I know I've rushed through it a bit because there's quite a lot to go into, but it's a taster into what we do on the IoT data transformation. And we'll be going into each of those sections in a load of detail with use cases, explaining on how to build your own company's data strategy and giving you recommendations and comparing to the market with some of our figures out there. We do work in partnership with OVIM, which is similar to Gartner, and that's where we get all our research and our figures based, but that will come out of the IoT data transformation course. So just a last note, this is, we'll be doing 2 half-a-days virtually on these dates for the virtual classroom, and it will be in August and in November. And if you've got any questions, please just email training at Tech Academy, and I'll put that in the group chat. Or if Sarah's on, Sarah, if you can put that in the group chat, the training at Tech Academy one. That was data transformation. So don't go anywhere, because I'm going to just have a quick view at the IoT security, which is very interesting at this moment in time. So if you give me 2 seconds, I'll bring it up. Yeah, and apologies for my accent. I will try and speak a little bit slow, a lot more slowly. Being South African, we're quite excitable people, and we like to get things out quite quickly. So IoT security, can you guys all see the IoT security on my screen? Yes? You can answer in the chat window. Yes, brilliant. Okay, great. So IoT security, this is great, and I've spoken to, for example, some of the regulators we've been doing some training with, and there's loads of thoughts around IoT security, and from the enterprise point of view, how do we tackle this, and how do we design it correctly? So the way I've tried to look at it is basically divided up into 3 major points. And the first one is your device security. The second one would be your domain security, your platform security. And then the final one is your end-to-end security architecture, and having a look at that. So if we have a look at that from this point of view, this is the scope of IoT. And you all have you'll basically know that we can use this in any of the different sectors. And as we've said before, IoT consists of 2 major parts. It's the Internet of Things, which is the Internet part, and the Thing part. Now, the Internet part means that we use Internet Protocol, which is TCP/IP, and that enables all of these devices to be linked worldwide. There's also, and as soon as that comes onto TCP/IP, we start speaking about this information that can be accessed all over the world, and therefore it needs to be secure. So going forward, basically, there's different ways that IoT devices communicate. If you on the call, can you please just go on mute, just in case there's background noise coming through. If we look at the different types of communication protocols like NFC, ZigBee, Z-Wave.
Sorry, there is some kind of disturbance. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, I can hear it as well. Let me just see if I can do something. Okay, yeah, it's gone quiet. Yeah, that's good. That's better. So again, just touching about Internet of Things. Every device will have an IP address, and that means it's susceptible to all of the threats that we currently have on the internet at the moment.
I think somebody.
Just give me a second. Everyone, if you can please go on mute, I really appreciate it. have the ability to do that. That's great.
You there? Sorry.
No, he's still there. Give me a second. Let's see if I can sort it. Imran, if you can hear me, could you please go mute?
Yes, I can hear you, but the problem is there's too much noise, huh?
Yeah, no, I was saying, I'm just trying to look and see who's. That looks like it's better now. Okay, awesome. Okay, so yeah, apologies about that. We were just talking about the IoT and the vulnerabilities that you get having IoT protocols, because you've got IP protocols. So when we have a look at this, there's two major factors that we'll have a look at going forward, and the two major points of IoT is the machine-to-machine and the Internet of Things. Now, currently, people will say that they've got 40,000, or some of the service providers will say, well, we've got 100,000 IoT devices. What they mean is they had machine-to-machine devices in a private APN that they need to now upgrade and have a look at going to IoT. So this is great, because as soon as we can get IoT, we can get all the rich features that we get out of the IP-based feature set, and communicate with it, and we can integrate with big data. But the point-to-point connectivity model that existed with machine-to-machine now exposes security flaws, and we need to have a look at that and how we will upgrade it or migrate it going forward. So there's quite a lot of data set and the security we need to have a look at it. So as you've seen on the previous slide, there's a generic hierarchical way of the way we gather our data, and we take it through all the way to be analyzed. And the secret to designing this is, once we know what we want to get out of our data set, and how we bringing in our data, either wired or wireless, and what we're integrating it with, we can then start doing the architecture and the security design around there. And that's why I said that's one of the key features of what we're trying to get out of here. So this is pretty good one, just a quick one to go over it. When I was speaking to some of the regulators and service providers, especially around the Middle East, like we said, we've got MB over IoT, which is licensed spectrum. We've got LTE-M, which is licensed, but then we've got LoRaWAN and Sigfox, which is unlicensed. Now, the thing is, if we're going to make this licensed spectrum very expensive, you need to add value to it, okay, in terms of a product to your clients. Like, for example, why would I want to use licensed spectrum instead of unlicensed spectrum? Because if it's an IoT device, as long as the traffic gets back to me and it's not, I'm not a real-time consumer of it, I can live with it being on LoRaWAN or Sigfox. It might not have the speed of the licensed spectrum, but what else could you offer me? And that's where the security part comes in, because as soon as you license it and a service provider can license it, or cellular service provider can license it, they then can start adding a value to it in terms of saying, okay, we could put this in an APM for you. We could take all of your IoT devices, similar to the machine to machine, but our market entry is that we can secure it going forward. And that's another thing that we need to think about, how we bring it in and how it's transported. Because if it's unlicensed, it's unsecured. If it's licensed, it can still be secured by using some of the cellular operators. So again, yeah, I've just spoken about this, gone into some examples. So IoT security implications, because the analytical generation of analysis of data is so essential, we need to consider how to protect the data throughout, and privacy implications of it. You know, for example, if you've got people that are in care homes, and we now have doctors that will, because of the whole COVID situation, are monitoring it remotely, their blood pressure type, their heart conditions, if they're on any medication, that's really personal information that needs to be protected going forward. Communications with emergency devices to coordinate in a disaster scenario. Again, we need to ensure that it's secure and we know what we're doing, transport, etc. And how we do that and how we protect it is what we need to understand. We understand the way that the flow of the traffic is happening, what's it using, what type of communication it's using, and then we can analyze it and secure it. Just an example of a couple of threats and attack vectors. So control systems, vehicles, even human body can be manipulated. Healthcare providers can improperly diagnose or treat. So again, like I was giving the scenario about someone that's on medication, if they start seeing irregular heart activity or physical activity degrading, the doctors might prescribe medicine that's not correct. Intruders can gain physical access to homes or commercial, loss of vehicle control. You know, we're talking about the likes of automated vehicles coming soon with the Tesla, and you know, automating parking devices now. Safety critical information such as warnings for broken gas lines, etc., can go down. Critical infrastructure damage, unlawful surveillance, you know, again, the privacy laws, inappropriate profiles, and these are just different types of threats that we are faced with going forward. And again, because the vandalism and the destruction of IoT assets, because it's out in the public infrastructure, it's there. This is all subject to all of these devices. So now we start thinking about these threats and how you know, intruders and how cyber criminals will take advantage of this. And these are some of the main issues. So obviously they can do controlled attacks, easy exposure to the physical devices, threats to human and machine, and brute force from that point of view. So we're starting to have, again, an idea of what we are now susceptible to, because again, IoT is growing so quickly and it's working awesomely. Security is always last on the list of good technology when it comes to, and now we're going to start addressing it going forward. Just to show you one of these sites, vulnerability of unconfigured devices, you can go to wiggle.net and see what networks aren't secured in your household or nearby you. And this is openly available on the network, and it can show you what wireless access points given location to database for unconfigured IoT devices. and this is openly available. This is a really good sheet, and when I'm speaking to a lot of my delegates, we go back to this all the time. We think about this, the bigger picture. So you start thinking about where are we going to be exposed? You know, is it going to be ransomware, cyber criminals, cyber warfare? Which part of the layer they're attacking are going to be the edge devices, the networks, or the platforms? So the platforms are normally a lot more secure because obviously they got clients. But then we start looking at denial of service attacks, distributed denial of service attacks. There's new vulnerabilities, there's existing vulnerabilities, and this is a really good graph, or sorry, really good illustration to go through this with it going forward. So again, we start taking IoT and the security of the devices and the end-to-end architecture very seriously. I mentioned earlier machine-to-machine upgrade process. So the security architecture is critical to the integrity we want to achieve, and we need to understand that. You know, is it feasible to upgrade to IoT, or do we build in parallel and migrate? If we're going to have a process where we take a machine to machine and upgrading it to IoT, is it a watertight process so that we can ensure that we can achieve our goals? And maybe we look at a platform migration as opposed to migrating machine to machine to IoT. Well, by, like I said, putting new devices and migrating to those. So it's something to think about, because obviously as soon as we go down that route, we're going to be exposed to all those vulnerabilities, as I mentioned to you before. So the device security topics, we spoke about the actual IoT devices, and one of the key points that we want to get out of it, and what we try to speak about everyone around IoT security, is the open web application security module model project. And basically that's basically having a look at how we can secure these devices, because we pushed all these devices out there without thinking about the security implications with it. So that was us having a look at it. So again, application security, and I'll be going into this in huge detail when we go into the course, but you can see what we start covering, all the different apps, how we do it, your AAAs, your authentication and authorization, your administration, all of that we start going into in huge detail. We look at the application security, the API management, the storage, the device management software, and how we have to have a look at this. And there's a good representation of the IoT middleware, what we need to secure. Open web application security project is what we're going to be basing everything around. And that, like I said, we'll go into that and how you can achieve that and work together with these guidelines going forward. Remember, every technology that comes out, there's always been good guidelines, and this has just come out for basically the IoT devices, and we'll be, you know, working with you guys to get to that. Like I said, the major parts of the domain when we go into it will be the platforms, the edge nodes, and the networks involved, and then finally the privacy, like your GDPR, having a look at that from a security point of view. Life cycle. So the same way what we do in enterprise and in service provider networks, we apply security life cycle to it, and we'll have a look at it, how we can use the different use cases that we've got there to secure this and get this going forward, using you know, authentication and authorization parts to it, and bringing in soft firewalls and demilitarized zones from an architecture point of view. Finally, I wanted to show you just some of the architecture that we'll be talking about in the security side, end-to-end security architecture. So this is, for example, different types of, I think it's Azure platforms that we'll bring in, and how we remotely bring it in with VPNs, different DMZ, which is a security zone through a firewall, and we can access what based on that point of view. The next slide will show you a different example of it if you're from the networking side, and you can see how they've broken this down into different levels. They've got different cellular zones, and each zone is secured. The way that they take this through into their data center. And remember, we follow the flow of the traffic upwards, and we can, take it securely into our network. And it gives you a really good idea. We'll get to this, and we'll go into loads of detail of why we have to break it up into these zones to aggregate that traffic and take it forward. So unfortunately, we're running out of time, but this is just a taster session on what we're doing with IoT security fundamentals, and also what you want to achieve out of there. We'll be doing live virtual classrooms 2 half-a-days in August and November. And from our side, I'll send you this email address again, or Sarah, again, you can pop this into the chat. If anyone wants to get in touch with us, we're more than welcome to go through it. And sometimes you might have a specific requirement. Feel free to come to us and say, you know what, we want to know this about IoT because we've got the strategy, but we're not too sure. Get in touch with us. We could tailor make certain parts of it to help you get what you want out of your business model and what you're trying to achieve with IoT security going forward. That's me from just giving you guys a bit of a taster session on IoT and what we do. I've just pasted that in there if you want to get in touch with us, and if you've got any questions, feel free to also ping me directly, and I can get in touch with Sarah. There's my email address. Are these courses free? No, unfortunately for the virtualization one, Sarah will get in touch and I'll give you the price list, based on it. Is there any other questions that you guys have? Like I said, we can send you the material briefings on it if that helps.
This is Tansai. Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
Can you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, my question is, look, I was looking for IoT related trainings, like short course trainings, actually from the basic one. But when I see the costs, sometimes they are, I think, that a little bit expensive. Is it possible to guys to negotiate with you and just reduce the price, or that's a fixed price?
Yeah, so regarding the pricing and booking and all that, just ping that email address, and Sarah or Lisa will definitely be in touch with you, and they can have a look at what you want to achieve regarding price, and also it depends on the amount of delegates, etc., that want to go into it.
Okay, all right, I'll do that.
Yeah, we can go into the IoT security protocols. We'll go into TLS, we'll go into HTTPS, we'll go into all of the certificates, the IPsec, all of the security protocols. Obviously, I've only had, I've literally meant to have 8 minutes on each section, but I can go into that, and we do go into that on the security side, Joseph. Okay, is there any other questions? And like I said, feel free to get in touch with us. Yeah, apologies for some of the noise today. Really appreciate you guys joining. And like I said, it's just a taste of what we do and what we go into from the IoT. It is a huge breadth of subject, and you'll know that. But what we're trying to do is apply a common architecture, a life cycle process to its thought process for the data side of it and the security side of it. Yep, so that's me. Sarah, I don't know if you want to mention anything from that going forward. Are you happy? Looks like she's happy. Okay.
Carlos,
Yes.
just a quick question. For somebody who doesn't have any IT background, there's a way for the person to start in a business, or do you need to have a IT background for you to do some courses?
You mean to understand the whole IoT and how it works, etc.?
Yeah.
No, so I mean, what we can do is we can send you out pre-reading material before the course, and then when you get onto the course, you can ask the questions, and we can help you out that way. Because obviously, there's a lot of people. For example, I deal with radio guys that are specifically focused on radio, but they want to know a lot about IoT. I speak to security guys that really know the security stuff, but they don't know how the whole IoT and the mobile environment works. And then we'll bring that in. So you can't know everything, but we do try and get you guys to a point where we can we can take you forward and add value to you with our training courses.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, and again, like all I can say, please, anything you got, any comments or thoughts or questions, just ping us an email. We're more than happy to get in touch with you. So yeah, appreciate you guys' time. I think our time's gonna run out anyway soon, but appreciate you guys joining from wherever you've joined throughout the world, and have a lovely day. Thank you.